Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Slightly early start here, so we'll give people another minute or so to join us. And also gives me a chance to make sure the audio is streaming properly. The training will last approximately an hour and a half. We do record the trainings, so if you can't stay for the whole time, you can always come back and rewatch it. Feel free to make use of the chat feature within YouTube to ask questions, and I will try to address them as we go over it. We do, as I said, we do record all the training, so you can always go back and view previous recordings as well. We do have other demos on our YouTube channel. I'll be referencing a couple of them just because they do a better job of showing features than I can here. And I guess without any further ado, let's go and get started. So on the page here, you see our dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. You can also get there from the virtualpbx.com website. Just on blue bar going to at the top of the website, there's a login link there. For admins or anyone in Ecd Queues, I do recommend bookmarking this page. It will make your life easier in the long run. To log in, we need your email address, which if you just signed up with us would have been the email address you signed up or used when in the sign up process. Excuse me. The password, which the system generates for you or your system admin created for you. And then the account name, which is typically your business name. Now, for some reason you don't have your password or you simply forgot, over here to the bottom right, just above the sign-in bar, we have a forgot your info link. So you can click on that. It's going to flip the box around. We still need your email address, right? That's your unique identifier. And then we need one of the two, right? Don't need both. So either the account name or a phone number on the account, right? That's one of your customer-facing phone numbers. And then you click reset password. The system sends you an email that has a link in it that takes you, basically logs you in temporarily and takes you to your user page, basically letting you change your password. Once you do that, it logs you out. You're not going to be able to do anything else once you're logged in there, and you'll be taken back to the sign-in page. So then you can re-enter your password, and then it gives you the opportunity then to click on Remember Me. So that way you don't have to always type it in. But then we can click Sign In, and we get into the dashboard. Now, I've logged into this account many times, so by default, the system will take me to the dashboard page. If it's your first time logging in, the system actually takes you to your user account page. You can always get there by clicking at your name on the top right. And again, this is where you would click on your password section here, and you could change your own password. Right? If you need to change someone else's password, you can do that on their users page as an admin. Now, as an admin, you also can get to the account settings over here on the left. The most common thing that's changed is the time zone that the company is based in. Now, as I said, this is a test account, so your accounts will be a little bit different. So under where it says user on the left-hand side here, it's going to have another section for billing, right? So that's where you'd find your credit card information if you needed to update it. You could see previous invoices. You can see your service plan, and you can edit who the billing contact person is, right? So the person who's getting the invoices, and essentially who can close the account or make account changes. Now, once you're done in this area, just click on Close to the top right, and it'll take you back to the dashboard. Just a heads up, for that first time logging in, you're going to have little the dash wizard pop-ups, right? So on the account page, tell you what things are. The dash wizard will come up here on the dashboard, on the users page, and on the groups page. So up here at the top, again, click on your name, get back to that account settings so you can change your password. For most of you, to the right of your name, you'll have a D&D toggle for Do Not Disturb. Right? You can click on that, and then you won't be getting calls on your user. The reason I don't have it is because my user is part of an Ecd queue, and that does not work well with the D&D toggle. Right, a little bit further to the right, we got the little help icon or the question mark icon. You'll have at least 3 of these 4 items. So the first is chat with us, right? This will open up a chat window towards the bottom right of your browser window. So you can chat with a support person and they can help you, walk you through setting up something. Next up, we have Learn More. This opens up a new tab, takes you right to our support pages. So you can look at individual guides with screenshots. Some of them have videos. Over here to the right, we have the online store. This will also open a new tab and take you to store.virtualpbx.com. This is where you could order a VoIP phone or a router or other hardware. Above that is the web phone. This is the one that may not show up. And in fact, by default, for most of you, it will not. The reason I have it here is because I have a web phone device on my user. So once that's been done, and then basically the next time I log in, it shows up here as an option. When you do have it here, when you click on it, it opens up a new tab. It takes you to webphone.virtualpbx.net. And that allows you to use Chrome or Firefox. Actually, let me take that back. So it gets you to a login page. It uses your dash login information to log into the web phone. And on the web phone, you want to be using Chrome or Firefox because then you can use those browsers to make and receive calls directly from the browser. Again, assuming your computer has a headset and mic. Web phone is not supported on mobile devices. It might at some point in the future, but currently it is not. Next, we have the 3 horizontal line icon, sometimes referred to as a hamburger icon or the menu icon. This takes you to other dash features. We are primarily going to be here in the dashboard for the majority of the training, but we will touch on all these other areas. Some of them are plan specific, meaning you might have to upgrade your plan. So like dynamic caller ID, for example, is one of those features that's on some plans, but not all plans. Right? Others like faxes here, that's on everybody's plan. Then we have the log out icon here. Here in the middle, under where it says sandbox training, I have total users 21. That means I have 21 people on my account, right? So these are people who make and receive calls. Then I have my total devices, 35, and a breakdown. Up here, first one is a soft phone. That just means a software application that uses your internet connection to make and receive calls, right? So a soft phone is a kind of VoIP phone, right? Since VoIP, if you don't already know, it stands for Voice over Internet Protocol, and that just means use your internet connection to make and receive calls, right? So a soft phone is a kind of VoIP phone, and I have seen of them. And now this bucket here is all soft phones, right? Whether they're the VirtualPBX soft phone app or someone else's app. All right, then we got the web phone. Looks like I got 7 of those. Again, that Chrome or Firefox. Also, technically a kind of VoIP phone. Cell phone, pretty self-explanatory. Most of us know what that is. SIP phone. This is a VoIP phone. It's a piece of hardware, right? So it's an actual physical phone, sits on your desk, connects typically via Ethernet, then to gets onto your internet, and you use that to make and receive calls. There are, in terms of physical VoIP phones, there are other kinds of VoIP phones. SIP is a subtype. So just be aware when you're shopping, you want to make sure your phone is SIP compliant or compatible. Unregistered devices, right here, showing I have 2. This is actually in reference to those SIP phones. So 2 of them are currently not connected. Now the system doesn't know why those phones are not registered, right? But this is just giving you a snapshot of what's going on. The unregistered devices could be simply they're not plugged in right now, right? Or maybe they're in the process of being set up. Maybe there's a router problem, or, router setting problems. Maybe that location where those 2 phones are at is having an ISP outage of some sort. All right, total numbers. These are my phone numbers on my account, right? I have 35, which is a lot. Your account includes at least anywhere from 1 to 15 phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. Once you go over that, there's an overage per number per month. It starts at $1.99. some of the older plans may have older or higher overages for the extra phone numbers. So for something like that, you'd want to talk to our account services team. Then we have a couple of breakdowns. The first one here is assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned number, that means you're using it, right? Someone can dial it and speak to somebody or leave a voicemail, join a conference, or be sending a fax. Right? Spare number counts towards your allotment of phone numbers. It just means you're not using it right now. Right? Maybe you're going to use it in the future, like you have a planned future expansion into a new city with a new area code, for example. You're like, okay, well, we'll get the numbers ahead of time so that way we can start printing up any marketing materials we need to have and get it on signs or on our website, that sort of thing. Also, it could be a number that you had for a special promotion, right? And that promotion ends. So like 4th of July in the United States, just a couple weeks ago now. You can say, hey, let's take this number out of service temporarily, so that way we don't get calls about a promotion that's no longer valid. Next breakdown, we have USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is actually US-Canada toll-free, right? It's an 800 number, 888-877, all the way down to 833 currently. USDID, that just means a US local phone number, right? So if you have a number in, say, Des Moines, Iowa, it would be a USDID, right? Same as if you had one in Houston, Texas. You can have international phone numbers if you're interested. You want to email our porting team. That's porting at virtualpbx.com. They would need to know the city and country that you want a phone number in. And then they'll let you know if that's a possibility, right? Because some places we can't get numbers for. And then any additional requirements, right? Because some countries have a lot more or much more stringent about releasing phone numbers than others. So they will let you know of any of those. Next up, I have conference bridges. This just means I have enabled the ability to host or moderate a conference on 4 of my users. Now, to the top right, we have my main numbers, right? My main company numbers. So these, 5 phone numbers, these all behave in the same fashion, right? So they're all going to the same location. They're all playing the same main greeting. The conference room number, you can have multiple conference numbers if you're so inclined, but this is the number everyone dials to get to the conference, right? Whether they're your staff members, your clients, or your vendors, they would all dial this number, then enter the conference room number, and then the PIN number. The fax box number, you can have the one main fax box number, and this is just the number you use to receive faxes on. And then you would get notifications via email when you have a fax coming in. The company directory, this downloads a CSV file, so you can see everybody, their names, their extension numbers, and their primary devices. The soft phone directory, this is for use with the VirtualPBX desktop soft phone application. So you would download this file, upload it to our soft phone app on either Mac OS or Windows, and this will allow you to see the status of the other soft phones on your account, right? So I could see that my coworker Mike is on a call with his soft phone right now, so I know not to call him. Right? Likewise, for this training, right, I changed my status on my soft phone to not available for calls. So now all my colleagues know, hey, don't call me right now. Now, if your staff members have a mix of phones, right? So let's say that my colleague Mike, let's say he has a Yealink phone, and he has a cell phone, and he has a soft phone all on his user. With the soft phone directory on my soft phone, I can only tell the status of his soft phone, right? So if he has a call that came to his cell phone and he's on there, I don't know it. All right. Then we have a store discount code. Just for being a Dash customer, you get a discount code for use in store.virtualpbx.com. Again, for use for like a VoIP phone or a router. And then the account realm. Every account has its own account realm. It's used in a couple things. One, it's used to program a third-party soft phone, right? So a soft phone application from somebody else. And it's also used when you need to send a fax out. So in Dash, you don't actually send a fax out within Dash. You just create an email like you normally do. You just use your email address that you use to log in with. When you create that email, in the to field, you put the plus sign, then number 1, then the area code and phone number you're faxing to, the @ symbol, and then your account realm. And then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF and click send. Now up here, along where it says the sandbox training, we have caller ID. If we click on that, expands it out. This is your company caller ID. So this pull down, which unfortunately doesn't work on my streaming software here, shows all your main numbers, right? Those 5 phone numbers over here. So you can choose any one of them, and that becomes your default number for several different features. Most notably for any of your VoIP phones, when they make an outbound call, by default on this account, they would have this 323 phone number. Next up, we have the company caller ID name. This is an optional feature. This allows you to input up to 15 characters over here in this box. That includes special characters and spaces that we will transmit as part of your outbound caller ID for your VoIP phone users. The other thing that the system wants you to input is this right here, company caller ID or company emergency information, or E911. Just fill out this form with a North American address and then click Save Changes. Once you click Save Changes, right, this company caller ID name information, if you filled it out, is transmitted to other carriers that support CNAM. Right, that's the technical term for it. Those carriers will update their servers. It takes them approximately 3 business days. Once that is complete, when you make an outbound call, then we transmit this information, right, as part of your outbound caller ID. Now, not every carrier supports CNAM. So it's possible when you make an outbound call, you go through a carrier that doesn't support it, which means your company name information does not get to your destination. Probably more relevant, though, is when you try to call cell phones. The cell phone providers, they control what shows up on the phones on their network, right? They're the ones who put spam risk for telemarketer. We can't override that, right? They control that information. So no matter what you put here, right, that may not get through to a cell phone that you call. You know, at best, it's going to just have your phone number. That's something to be aware of. Basically, that's something that will be, I expect, to change over time. That's just my personal opinion. But I know, like my personal carrier, when I checked with them, they wanted to charge me an extra $10 per month in order to have company name information show up on my cell phone for every call. I wasn't willing to pay that. I'm guessing a lot of people agree with me on that, at least from what I've encountered. All right, hold music over here to the right. So on Dash, you can upload your own hold music or your own media files. .wave, .mp3. You do want to record in mono, and that way you're always sure it's going to play back properly when you listen to it over the phone. The system will actually accept a stereo file, but then it may not play back properly for you. So you want to upload in mono. You would just click the upload icon here and find an MP3 or .wave file on your system. Click the up arrow icon. Once it finishes uploading, you click Save Changes. So what this is when a call comes into one of your users, right? They pick up the call on their VoIP phone. They press hold on that VoIP phone. That's when this media file will play. All right, hours is actually part of main number. So let's just go to main number. So up here at the top, we got the main company numbers. Right, so if I don't want to use one of these numbers as my main number any longer, right, I can click the unassign button next to it. Now, that doesn't mean I've removed the number or deleted it from my account. I've just now made it a spare number. Right, so I can keep doing that here, and I can take myself down to 3 numbers as my main numbers. Both of those numbers are now spare, so they're still on my account. Now, any place you can add a number, right? So like main numbers, your groups, your users, you have other potentially secondary auto attendants. You typically have an option for add from spare numbers or bind numbers. Right? So add from spare numbers, when you click on it, it's going to show your available numbers that you already have on your account, but you're not already using. Right? So like if you wanted to reuse a number, you unassign it first, and then you can add it from spare. Right? You would just click on the box, click on add selected, and then it would show up here. Bind numbers, that's how you add new numbers to your account. right? You have your choice of local and toll-free. Toll-free, you select toll-free and you select the toll-free prefix you want to work with, and you click on search. The system will populate a list of numbers, and you can scroll down to see, add a number that you like, or you can add multiple. You can keep adding numbers as you see fit. All right, so you see it here. I have a little trash icon here if I decide I don't want it after all. Now this list is dynamic. So if I waited for, like I went to lunch at this point, and I came back and I clicked by numbers, it's possible this number wasn't actually available any longer because someone else grabbed it while I was on the way at lunch. So we'll go ahead and click by here. So now the system is verifying that someone else didn't take the number while I was talking. Typically doesn't have a problem, but then it adds it to the account and activates it. Now it's ready for use. And in fact, someone can dial this number right now, it would get through to my system. If I click on the little gear icon here to the far right, this is where you would adjust the caller ID for that phone number. So you can adjust the outbound caller ID, and you can also turn on the ability to accept inbound caller ID name information. Right, so it show up on your staff members' phones. E911, each phone number you can assign its own individual E911 address. This is important because it allows you to assign different phone numbers and thus addresses to your VoIP phones. So if you have staff working remotely, you can have the proper address associated for that person's VoIP phone. So that way, when they call 911, if they happen to call 911 from their VoIP phone, emergency services get the correct address. Prepend is a VoIP feature where you can add additional text that shows up on the caller ID as part of the on their VoIP phone's displays. Right, so it gives your staff members a heads up about what the call might be about. Now, one thing I like to show for local numbers, you need to know the area code. And it's at times what will happen is when you do a search for an area code, you'll get this message saying there's no numbers available. That means that particular area code is exhausted. So we can't get numbers for it. The best thing to do is to check to see if there's an overlay area code. Right, so 310, that's in Southern California, near LA. Right, so, and I already know this, 424 is the exact overlay for 310. Right, overlay just means they share the exact same geographic space. Right, so 2 area codes for one specific location. This is very common, or becoming much more common, but very common for major cities, right? Just because some people have multiple cell phones now, right? Back when I was a kid, we had one phone number, maybe 2 for like the fancy people had 2 phone numbers at their house, right? Now it's, you can have a household with 5 or 6 phone numbers because everyone has their own cell phone. But beyond that, it's the same process, right? Just click add numbers, click by, and it would add it here. So once you have phone numbers, then you can set up your office hours strategy. By default, new accounts are set up at 24-hour open office. Right? You're ready. The system's ready to take calls, but you can choose custom office hours. If you do, for each day of the week, right, put a check mark in front of the days that you're open, and then you select your open hours in 24-hour or military time. So here I'm saying I'm open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Down here towards the bottom, you also have the option to be closed for lunch, right? So if everyone goes to lunch at the same time, right, you can click here, and then you can set your lunch hours, again, in that 24-hour or military time. And then any changes you make, click on Save Changes. Then you have office holidays. First up, are you closed for holidays? If you are, put a check mark. Then over here to the right, you have the option to add holidays. You have single day, date range, and advanced. Each one of these creates a new row. All right, so single day, like I have here for New Year's Eve, you just give it a name, month, and date. Click on Save Changes. All right, date range, I have here for Xmas break. Again, give it a name, start date, end date, Save Changes. Now, there's no year indicator, so as a precaution, we recommend not having a date range with New Year's Eve and New Year's Day together. Just have them separated out. It hasn't caused a problem in many years, but I know way back when we first launched Dash, it did cause a problem. And then advanced is like we have here for Thanksgiving, where I'm just saying, hey, the third Thursday, November, closed, right? So choose your month. This middle pull down, which again doesn't work on my software, you have first through fifth as well as last to choose from, and then the day of the week. And then any changes here, you click on Save Changes. Okay, next up we have incoming call handling. So for my main numbers, right, during my office hours, whatnot, so I have, this is how the system is going to handle calls that are coming in on my main numbers. Right now, here by default, it starts showing my open hours, but I do have an after hours tab and a holidays tab, right? So if I had under the office hours strategy, if I had said we're closed for lunch, I'd also have a tab for lunch hours. And now it's basically saying, hey, what do you want to do during this time of day in terms of calls coming on your main numbers? So first option here, call comes in, goes to the virtual receptionist. This is a link. And here you have the settings for your virtual receptionist or your auto attendant, some people call it. Now, first up, main menu. This is what people can press on their phones to navigate through your phone system, right? 1 for sales, 2 for support, that sort of thing. You click on add route, that creates a new row. This first full pull down, you have the default action, 0 through 9, and the star key. Right, the second pull down is things on your system. So if we go up here, right, so you've got the user directory, right, our PBX directory, dial by name directory, however you want to call it. User, which means you're having a menu option go to a specific person, right? Press 1 to speak to John. Right, you can scroll further down. You have call queues. This is if you're making use of Ecd Queues, which is a call center feature. Then we've got groups. These are hunt groups or ring groups, right? So typically departments. And Ecd queues are similar to groups. They just have more advanced routing options. But you're limited to VoIP phones. You can send a menu option to a specific device, right? So a specific phone. Not always recommended, just because if that phone doesn't have built-in voicemail, it can just ring and ring and ring until the person decides to hang up, which might be frustrating for your customers. Or you can send a menu option to a voicemail box. So leave a message kind of thing. All right, greetings over here on the right. These are your greeting options, right? You don't have to do all of these. You can do whichever one suits you best. First up is text-to-speech, right? You type in what you want the system to say. You have 250 characters to work with, not words, characters. It does not count spaces in my experience, so that does help. I have at times gotten over 250 characters, but consistently 250 works, so that's why I say that. When you click Update, Save, and Save Changes from the text-to-speech greeting here, the system will save the file, and it uses a generic name, and it reuses that generic name, right? So since we're in my open hours, that text-to-speech file is main open hours menu TTS, right? So let's say I type one in here, hit update, etc., and I call in, I listen to it. Oh no, that I forgot to put Bob as a menu option 8. I'm like, damn it! So I come back here, I set up menu 8 to go to Bob, and then I update the greeting. Right? When I click update, save and save changes, now I have 2 files that are called main open hours menu TTS. That can be confusing later on if I need to select one from a pull-down menu because I have no way to tell which one is which. My recommendation is if you use text-to-speech, which is good to use like if you're not familiar with PBX systems, you're a startup, or you're just not even sure yet how you want calls to route, text-to-speech is fine, right? You can get it done quickly and you can test. But after you click update, save changes, you want to get to your greetings tab, which we're getting to shortly, so you can change the name of the file, so that way you can swap them out quickly from pull-down menus if you need to. All right, next up, we have upload your own file. .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. You just click on choose file, find the file, and then you would click update and save changes. This little box here, this allows you to name the file on your dash system so you recognize it. Choose from existing recordings. This is a pull-down menu. Unfortunately, it won't work on the streaming software properly, but it shows all your media files, right? So whether they're main greetings, voicemail greetings, hold music files, they're all going to show up, which is why you want names you can quickly identify. Record it over the phone. So the system starts off with this message here: pick up a phone registered on the account. What that means is pick up a VoIP phone on the account. Right? That's a security feature, so someone can't randomly call in and change your main greeting over the phone. You can change that. And in fact, on this system right now, under the settings, allow outside recording, this is turned on. This means when this is on, I can call in from a cell phone or a landline and change my main greeting. By default, this is actually off. Right. So then you call your main number, and then you enter in the PIN number. This PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So it's only available during my open hours, which is 9 to 5. So if I called into my system at 7 p.m. and I tried to enter this PIN number, it won't work. The system will treat it as an invalid entry. Now, if you just signed up, when you first call in to your main number, right, the system tells you that a greeting has not been set up for this menu, and then asks you for a PIN number, right? So then you would provide the appropriate PIN number for the time of day. If, however, you already have a greeting in place, let's say you started off with text-to-speech greeting, you renamed it, and now you're just like, okay, some of my customers complained or said something about it. It sounded weird. I'm used to hearing your voice. Yeah, okay, let me just call in, record a greeting over the phone. When you do that, since you already have a greeting in place, right, the main greeting will play. That's when you enter the PIN number. When the greeting is playing, the system will recognize, oh, you want to record over the phone. Again, walk you through the steps of recording over the phone. Now, once you do that, there's no option to give it a file name when you record it over the phone. So the system reuses the file name that's already in place, right? So you overwrote the content, but it's still greeting A that's playing because that was what was assigned at the time. All right, professional recording services. Basically, when you click order, this will open up a new tab and take you to Snap Recordings. They have many voice actors and actresses to choose from. They have their own pricing packages, and they deliver to you via email. So then you could then upload your own file. All right, so next up we have settings. Now the first two I explained together, just easier for me. So we have number of retries on missed dial, basically how many times the inbound caller can make a mistake, and the dialing timeout, which is how much time the system listens for additional button presses. So say someone calls in, right? They hear the greeting, and let's say they press number 7. Right now, the system will wait for a count of 5, saying to see if there's additional button presses, right? See if there's a longer number that this person's calling in. After that count of 5, which is what we set here, right? The system goes, oh, that's not a valid menu option. There's no extension number 7. System says, well, they get 1 retry. So now it plays the greeting again, right? So second playing of the greeting. So now that customer can call, again, listen to the greeting. Let's say they press 9. System again waits for a count of 5. Nope, that's what they meant. Not a valid option, not a valid extension. Now the system says, well, they don't get any more retries. In this case, it would send the caller to the default action, which is this last one here, which takes them to the dial by name directory. If I remove that, click the little X there. So now on that second attempt, right, they still had a invalid option. In that particular scenario, the system tells the inbound caller, we did not recognize your entry, goodbye, and ends the call. One thing I should point out, the reason to not have a default action is because of robodialers, right? Because a robodialer can come in, right? They're going to hear your greeting, however, retries you give them, and then get to the whatever your default action is, right? And that's just taking up more minutes on your plan, right? If you don't have a default action, that means you're making the inbound caller press something to get through, right? So that means it's a person, right? They actually wanted to speak to someone and not just waste your time. All right, we already covered outside recording. So next up, we've got allow dialing extensions. By default, this is on. And all that means is if the inbound caller enters in a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call. All right, so if I turn this off, that means the inbound caller, they can only press a menu option. Right, the system will treat entering extension numbers as invalid. And then we have the suppress the playing of the invalid entry message. Right, so if you don't want the system to tell the inbound caller that, hey, we didn't recognize your entry, goodbye, you then can turn this on and that message will not play. And that's an instance where then you would have like a default action to go to like a ring group or something, right? Saying, hey, thank you for calling. Please hold while your call is transferred to the next available staff member. Yeah, you have these set to 0 or 1, and then that invalid entry message doesn't play, but then the caller gets that default action. So any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you need to click Save here, and then you'll take back to your incoming call handler page. You need to click Save Changes here as well. You're clicking Save twice. All right, second option, this is your live operator answer option, right? So basically, it's a fancy way of saying you're giving a staff member a chance to answer the call first. If they're not able to get to it, then the caller goes to the virtual receptionist. Right, now typically that means you're selecting users, your call queues, or your ring groups, right? And groups makes a lot of sense just because usually that means you have multiple people. But you can send it to devices. I don't know why voicemail box is here. That doesn't really make sense. Media file also not recommended, just because once the media file finishes, right, then the caller gets sent to your virtual receptionist, and then they're going to hear a second greeting. So that could throw people off. Now we're still in my open hours, so I have that same virtual receptionist that we were just looking at. If I change this to after hours, you can see that I would have a different menu option, and I would likely have a different greeting play, right? Because it's after hours versus open hours. All right, next up, this option here, essentially you can have callers go straight to voicemail if you want them to, right? And then you select the particular voicemail box you're sending them to. But this pull down, right, you can offer it to your users, your groups, your queues. You can send it to a specific device or even a media file, right? It's have a greeting file play and then they get the voicemail greeting. Now, one thing to know about this particular option is that the system only offers it to this first option for 20 seconds. There's no way to change that. And then it would go to the voicemail box you choose. This fourth option may not show up for everybody. It only shows up for accounts that have an advanced call flow created by our support team or customer service team, or if you've made a secondary attendant available in main menu. Right, now the secondary attendance, that's a plan specific feature, which we're about to get into. But for most of you, you're going to have these first three options. And so for like holidays, right, skip the voicemail is fairly common, right? Especially for people who are when they're closed for the holidays. Like, nope, just send everyone to voicemail. Could also come up for like a seasonal business, that sort of thing. All right, main conference number. You can add multiple conference numbers if you want to, right? Just either add from spare or buy new. You also have the option here for a custom greeting. Let's highlight that just a little bit for a brief second. and then you can enter in a text-to-speech greeting. Right? Even without this, right? So if I left this disabled, the system says welcome to the conference and then prompts the inbound caller to enter the conference room number and then the PIN number. Excuse me. All right, the main fax box number, you can only have the one fax box number, so that's why I don't have the option here to buy new or add from spare. Once you have one set up, though, you can click on Edit Fax Box here. And the first thing is the inbound notifications. So that is, you enter in an email address in the box to the right, and that email address will get an email every time a fax comes through, whether that fax completed successfully or failed. A common thing we see is, or get support tickets about, is the customer says, hey, I got a failed fax attempt. What happened? And when you look at it, it's from a valid phone number, right? But like the call lasted like 6 seconds in the call log. So that's like, well, okay, that was not enough time to transmit a page, right? So then it's is this a phone number you recognize, or were you expecting a fax? If the answer to those is no, it's possible someone called in to your fax number, right? Heard fax tones and hung up. So like, especially in the call log, if you see a wireless call and that goes to your fax box number, as far as I know, most cell phones can't send a fax. So that was probably just a wrong number dial. Email permissions. This is designed to put your company domain in this field to the right, and that will allow anyone to send a fax out on your account who has the correct email domain, right? So in this case, at virtualpbx.com, right, that's our staff members have emails that end that way. So anyone can send out a fax on this account without actually being a user on my account. All right, auto attendance. So this is a plan-specific feature, allows you to create secondary attendance. There's two primary use cases for this. The first is for submenuing, right? So if you want a menu, people call in and then they have the choice for pressing 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, and then any other languages, right? Each one of those languages, you would come here under auto attendance and click on add attendant, right? So make it English, we'll make next one Spanish, etc. Give it an extension number and then create auto attendant. And then you would click on the name and make sure it says available in main menu, right? That tells you that this auto attendant is designed to be a submenu option, right? Available in other menus. The other reason you would have secondary attendance is if you actually own multiple small businesses, right? So each business has its own phone number and its own main greeting, but you have the same staff people answer the calls for these multiple businesses, right? So then you can have them on the same account. Same process, right? You click add, you give it a name and an extension number, but when you click on the name here, you would leave it as unavailable in main menu. That's the default, right? Then just like anywhere else, right? You can add from spare, buy new numbers. So that way this attendant can have its own phone number, right? Extension numbers. For anything that has an extension number, if you want to change the extension, I recommend adding the new extension number first, entering it here, click on Save Changes, right? You click on the box again to expand it, and then you unassign the original extension number and then click on Save Changes. Otherwise, you get an error message. And then we have the little gear, the wrench icon here under Settings. And you see here, I have open hours, after hours, and holidays, right? These times, or dates in the case of holidays, match what we already set up under main menu, right? So if you have secondary businesses, then they all have to have the same hours of operation. If you don't, let's say you have something that's open 24/7 and other businesses that aren't, you may have to have 2 accounts. You can talk to our account services team and see if it's possible to have a custom build done. And even if they can't, right, or they say it's, it comes out, it's going to be easier for you to manage separate accounts, they can normally work with you on the pricing so that you're not paying full price for both accounts. All right, next up is our Devices tab. This shows your devices on the account. Red means it's unregistered, meaning we can't send calls to it. Black means you've turned it off or enable. And then green means it's registered, so we'll send calls to it. Up here at the top is where you add a device. SIP phone, this is a physical phone that sits on someone's desk. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Some of them have a lot of models to work with. Some of them not so much. So you can also use this as your shopping list if you needed to. That should also be as far as I know, that's a web page still on our support pages to show a list of the compatible phones. From here, though, you need to find the make and model of the phone you want to work with. And then you need to give it a name, right? Like Bob's phone or break room phone, something of that nature, just so you can identify it. And then you need the MAC address. This is on the phone itself, right? Typically a sticker on the back, or if the phone's plugged in under like its status settings or basic settings, usually there's a heading for MAC. It's unique for each phone. And then you click on Create Device. Now, once it's created here, the only other thing you need to do is go to Users, assign it to the user, as well as under the wrench icon here, under Advanced, go to Miscellaneous, unlock the phone, right? So this allows the reprovision of the phone. Now, in terms of our dashboard, that's all you need to do. Unfortunately, there's more to it. So you need to access the phone's web user interface, right? The web UI. That's typically done by finding the IP address of the phone, entering the IP address in their browser, and the computer that you do that with needs to be on the same network as that phone. It's going to ask you for login information, and then you need to enter in a URL. Basically, you're telling the phone, hey, when you get on the internet, go here, grab your config file. It does so. It's going to reboot a couple times, and then when it's done, it shows up as a green device. For the specifics of that, because it's slightly different for each manufacturer, you want to go to our support pages and you want the document auto provisioning phones. It's going to have screenshots of the various manufacturers, the proper syntax for that URL, usually a couple other settings to double check. All right, cell phone and landline are the same, whereas you give it a name, right? Mary's phone, right? And then the number, where you have to put +1, area code and phone number. You click on Create Device. Now, when I'm going to go down here to this one that's already on the account. So right here, right, proper format. We go to my advanced options here. This is the default settings for a newly added cell phone or landline. So when we offer a call to a cell phone or landline, right? So call comes in, you send it to your user, and it's going to your cell phone, right? Your cell phone will ring. You'll see the other person's phone number, right? When you pick up, you're going to hear, this is a forwarded call. Please press 1. When you press 1, you're telling the system, yes, you are there, and yes, you want to take this call. And then it connects the other person to you. You begin speaking. Now, if, for instance, you added a cell phone device, but it's actually going to an automated answering service that you want to use for after hours, right? That automated answering service can't press 1, right? It doesn't have fingers. It just wants the call to be connected to it, and then it'll take it from there. So in that instance, you would want to come to here under the advanced settings, and this first one here, which says allow use of cell phone's voicemail or landline's voicemail, put a check mark here. What that does is you'll no longer get that message to press 1 to accept the call. Instead, when we send the call to this phone number, when we hear that pickup tone, we connect the call. Right? We don't wait for anything else. Right? So for that automated answering service, that works great because it says, hey, call's coming to me, pick up, and now it handles the call on its own. If this demo device here was actually my cell phone, and I had it set like this, what could happen is call comes to my cell phone and I'm not able to pick up. Say I'm driving and I'm being responsible. And I don't have Bluetooth or whatever set up yet for whatever reasons. But then my cell phone's voicemail picks up, right? That's a pickup tone. So that inbound caller ends up on my cell phone, my personal cell phone's voicemail box because of this setting here. Now, some people want that, right? Some people definitely don't. The other thing that sometimes people change is this second one down here. Keep original caller ID. So customer Mary calls in, gets to your cell phone. You see on your cell phone, you see customer Mary's phone number. You don't recognize it. Right? And let's say you've had like 5 calls of extending your auto warranty and you're just tired of it. You're like, nope, you can go to voicemail. I have other things to do. Maybe you're able to reconnect with customer Mary, maybe not. So what you could do is uncheck keep original caller ID. So now what happens when customer Mary calls into the system and it gets to your cell phone, you see your main company number, not customer Mary's phone number, right? Main company number. What I'm talking about is back here on the dashboard under caller ID, whatever phone number you selected here in this first pull down, that's the number that would show up on your cell phone. So hopefully you would recognize your company number or your business number, so that way you would know, oh, this is something it's worthwhile for me to take. All right, soft phone. When you add a soft phone on the devices page, you can only add a third-party soft phone, meaning you cannot add a VirtualPBX soft phone on your devices page. Right? So this is just designed to be for use with someone else's soft phone application. Right? You would give it a name, and then you need to copy the SIP username. If you click on the SIP password box, then you can copy that, and then the realm. Right? Those are the 3 pieces of information you need to program or provision that third-party soft phone or device. And again, after you click create device, you would just need to assign it to a user. We do have guides for some soft phones that are on the market for third-party, but they are tons of them, so we don't actually have a guide for every soft phone. If you want to add a VirtualPBX soft phone, you need to actually start on the users page. One thing to keep in mind also on this wrench icon here, under advanced audio, this is where you would check the codecs. For physical phones, we recommend G711A and G711U. For the VirtualPBX soft phone, it should be Opus. Now, if you add, let's say you add a third-party soft phone, but you're going to use it to program a physical VoIP phone, you can do that. Just make sure when you come over here under the audio that you make sure it's got the G711A and G711U over to the right. All right. The other thing to keep in mind that under Advanced Emergency Caller ID, right, this is where you can select different phone numbers on your account and their associated addresses for the purposes of E911. All right, the Greetings Manager, this shows all your media files on the account. Right, hold music, main greeting, voicemail greetings, right? They all show up here. You have their name and then their source, right? Upload means you uploaded the file. TTS means you use the text-to-speech feature from the virtual receptionist. Recording means you recorded it over the phone. Here you have the playback icon. This is fairly new, only a couple weeks old. You have a download icon here as well, so you can download it and listen to your computer on your computer or device if for some reason it doesn't play back properly here in the browser. The little wrench icon here at the far right, this is where you can delete a greeting or you can just change its name to something you can recognize. All right, groups, short for ring groups or hunt groups, departments. All right, this is an included feature. When you up here at the top, you click Add Group. You give it a name and an extension number, and then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group, and then you would click on Create Group. Once a group's created, you can click on its name. Right, so you can always change the name later if you need to. And then you have the group call attempts, little arrows here to the far right, so you can increase or decrease the number of inbound call attempts. Right, and basically what this is saying is how many times can that inbound caller be offered to your staff members that are part of this group. and then you would click on Save Changes. Next, you would click on the Members box, and then you see all of your staff members who are in the group and the ring times you're offering them. Along the top here, these are timestamps. You can edit this last one here. The default is actually 120 seconds for any group. Now, this setup right here is what's called blast ringing or ring all, right? So it rings everybody at once. I can click distribute. So now I'm ringing in order, right? So every call that comes in starts with Aaron, then goes to David, then goes to Michael, then to Peter, then to Gio. Now, if I don't want that order, or let's say I need to change it, let's say Aaron here has a project I need him to work on, right? So I can click and drag him to the bottom. Now he's still first because he's starting off at 0 seconds, but let's do some additional adjustment. Let's say Gio just finished a big project, do something like that. Now I can click distribute again, right? So now it starts with Gio, right? Ends with Aaron. These are sliders, so I can click and drag how I see fit so I can have more overlap if I want, or less. Right, so I could do something like that. Any changes you make, you click on Save Changes. Down here at the bottom, right, that's where you can add more people to the group, or you can click Remove to remove someone from the group. Something to keep in mind for the users that are in a group, right? When they get a call from the group, it will ring all of their devices, right? So say Michael here, he has 3 different phones on his user. All of them are going to ring at the same time, right? Now, there's a user feature called Follow Me where you could set up, hey, ring, SIP phone, then like my cell phone, and then a soft phone, right? And you can, like this, you can set up the order and the duration. Calls from the group, ignore that feature completely. Group users can accept calls from cell phones or landlines as well as VoIP devices, right? Whereas queues, you can only accept calls with a VoIP device currently. We're testing using cell phones and queues. Right. Queues can have extensions, and they can have multiple ones if you want them to. Right. Just add an extension. Groups can, hopefully I said groups the previous time. Anyway, we're on groups. So groups can have their own phone numbers. Right. You can either add from or by mail. Now, once you add a phone number to a group, these phone numbers on these 2 groups, for example, right, these are available 24/7. Right. So because they're not an auto attendant number nor a main number, right, they don't have hours of operation. So that's why they're available 24/7. Groups have features. So first up is ring back. So by default, when a call comes into a group, right, we send the caller to the users, right? The user's phones start to ring, right? That ringing sound then gets piped back to the inbound caller. If you want to replace that sound of the ringing coming back to your inbound caller, then you would enable ringback, and then you would upload a media file, right? .wav, .mp3 recorded in mono under 1 megabyte. If for some reason your staff member's phone is not sending us that ringing sound, the ringback file will not play, right? It's replacing that ringing sound. So that ringing sound has to be there in the first place. It doesn't come up very often. Next action, to me, this is the most important group feature. And it's basically saying, hey, if no one answers the call, what do you want the system to do with the call? This is a pull down, and you can basically send it to user, a group, back to your main menu, one of your other auto attendants. You can send it back to a voicemail, call queue, etc. Allow call forwarding. If you enable this, that means your users can make use of call forwarding, right? So they're not going to be at their normal phone, just forward the calls to their cell phone, for example. Caller ID Prepend. This is for your VoIP phone users. When you enable this, you can enter additional text or numbers that shows up as part of the caller ID on your staff members' VoIP phones, right? So if you have staff members in multiple roles or multiple groups or what have you, it gives them a heads up about what the call might be about. All right, numbers. This will start off by taking us to our numbers in use. So this shows you your numbers and where they are. Right? You're not able to unassign here or assign numbers here. But you can click the little gear icon so you can update the caller ID information or the E911, which is probably the most important in my opinion, as well as prepend, again, for your VoIP phone users. Spare numbers. Once a number is spare, you can now have the ability to get rid of it from your account. So for instance, let us say I want to get rid of a few phone numbers here. See, now up here at the top, this delete option popped up. I click on that. It says, are you sure you wanted to remove these numbers or delete the numbers? I click yes. It says, okay, they're removed. Now they're actually gone from my account. Right, you can still buy numbers here, right? Local or toll-free. It's just going to add them as a spare number, right? So then you would assign for them from the add spare numbers option. A port actually starts the port process. Right, you just give it a name, choose US local or toll-free, and then you need to upload a copy of your bill in PDF format. It has to be within 30 days. Then you have to add, or the system will ask you to fill out a few forms, one of which is the address associated with the phone number, the phone numbers that you want to port. It will give you the opportunity to download a blank letter of agency or LOA, and then you can upload a completed and signed LOA. You can actually put in the port request date and email address of who you want to be notified. Excuse me. So for toll-free numbers, typically, if everything's correct, about 3 to 5 business days for the port to complete. Local numbers, average about 2 to 3 weeks if everything's correct. If we get a rejection, it's not always very specific, right? So like we'll get told like the address and zip code mismatch, but we're not necessarily told that the street number is wrong, right? Or like we'll be told, hey, the authorized signature doesn't match what's on file. They're not going to tell us who the proper person is. Now, for any rejection, we like to double check to make sure we didn't have a typo on our side. Or sometimes, like for the address, right, there might be an address on the LOA, but if we look at the bill copy you submitted, there's a different address there for you, not for the telecom company. So then we try that secondary address before we before we contact you saying, okay, now we're getting a rejection. We tried both these addresses. So you need to check, at that point you would need to talk to your carrier about what needs to be on the port request in order to port out. Oh, in terms of the LOA, it does need to be signed, right? Your digital signature is fine, or you can print it out, sign it manually, and scan it back in, right? But if you just type your name in twice, that will get rejected. Right, users will show all the users on your account. People with the little blue suit icon, right? These are system admins, right? So they can do all the stuff we're talking about here. The gray people are just your standard users. Up here at the top is where you add new users and you fill out the form, right? First name, last name, pretty easy. Email address used for login, that needs to be unique for each user, right? So you can't reuse email addresses. Then you create a password, you choose an extension number. The system will suggest an extension number for you. You don't have to follow it, right? You can just clear it out and type in whatever extension numbers you want to use. Now, by default, the system wants to create a voicemail box for the user. That voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. So for instance, let's say you create a user, right, and the voicemail box at the same time. Then you added a Yealink phone to the user, get it registered. That person can then pick up that Yealink phone, dial *98 on the phone. That will log them directly into this voicemail box you just created. The system will then prompt them to enter in a PIN number, right? So they're creating their own PIN number, and then walk them through recording their voicemail reading. Right, so basically then their voicemail is all set up. Include in the user directory, right? Put a check mark if you want them to be there. You can change this later. Send emails to an alternate address. So by default, the system uses the email address used for login to send system notifications, right? So like voicemail notifications, or password resets. If for some reason you don't want to use the email address used for login for those, then you would click here to add a different email address in this box. Right, so they use one email address to log in, and they use a separate email address to check messages. And then this last one here, send credentials to the user. I usually recommend putting a check mark here. So that way this person will get an email saying, hey, you've been added to Dash. Here's your login information. Right? If you need to add just one person, create user. If you need to add multiple, create user and add another. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. Right? So you can change their name. Here, you can change their credentials, right? So the email address or their password. You also have the option here to send the password reset email to them. Here, you can change their voicemail box PIN number. Right, here's your option to be in the directory. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's your option to send to an alternate address. And then here's the option to be in the user directory. Over here, this first pull down, you can change a user into an admin or an admin to a user. Second pull down, this is for time zone for the user, so that way their voicemail timestamps are correct. Ringing timeout. So for this user, it's grayed out because I have the follow me feature enabled. But by default, for any user, when you add them, their ringing timeout is set to 20 seconds. That's plenty of time to send calls to a landline or a VoIP phone. If you're creating a user and they're going to use a cell phone, you'd want to change this to 30 seconds or even up to 45. Right? It simply takes longer to send calls to a cell phone than it does to a landline. Right? So when we send a call to a landline, right, we send it to the landline telecom. They go, oh, it's right here. Right? They know exactly where that phone is. Versus when we send a call to a cell phone number, right, we send it to the cell phone telecom, and they say, hold on a second, we have to find them first. Right? Ping cell phone towers, they find you, then the call goes through. That delay, right, that trying to find you is why you, from a PBX system standpoint, you need to have a longer ring time for calls going to a cell phone. All right, users can have multiple extension numbers if you want them to. You can also add phone numbers either from spare or by new. Now, just like in groups, a phone number on a user is available 24/7. It does not have hours of operation. Now, devices. For users, you can add devices directly to the user, either from spare devices or new. Right, you have the same options here. I want to highlight the soft phone here. This is how you add a VirtualPBX soft phone. Right, you click on New Devices, add soft phone, and you see down here at the bottom, it's grayed out, it says Use Third-Party Application. You can click on this. Now it says Use VirtualPBX Application. It's going to update. So now I just need to give it a name, right? So, right, and now I can click on Create Device and then Save Changes. Once I click Save Changes, Aaron here gets an email from the system saying, hey, your cell phone has been created. Here's your username. Here's your password. Here are download links. Right, so then you can download the app, use the user information to log into the app, and now you can use a soft phone to make and receive calls. Right, so the VirtualPBX soft phone has its own separate set of credentials than what you would use to log into your dashboard here. The other thing that I find easier to do here, especially, is adding the web phone. Since the web phone uses your Dash login information, it just makes sense to add it right to a user who has login information. And then you give it a name, create device, save changes, and then basically the next time Aaron logs in, right, when he goes to the help icon, he'd have the web phone link available to him, or he can just go to webphone.virtualpbx.net from Chrome or Firefox, and you use his Dash login to make and receive calls there. All right, user features, caller ID number. You can turn this on for any user that has their own phone number. What you're doing here is you select their phone number, you click Save Changes. This phone number now becomes their outbound caller ID, right? Instead of the system default under the dashboard page. under the caller ID number. Right, this 703 number becomes Aaron's default outbound caller ID phone number. Virtual text, this is a new feature. When you click enable, you select a phone number on the account, and that phone number is either a main number, auto attendant number, or a number associated with the user. You click on Save Changes. Once you do that, Aaron would get an email saying, "Welcome to Virtual Text. Here's link to log in with login information." And then he can use the Virtual Text app either on his phone or via the website to send and receive texts. Virtual Text, you can also share numbers. So like your main numbers, you can share with your staff members. So that way you have multiple people keeping track of texts that are coming in and out to your main number. Voicemail box. By default, this is enabled on a user, right? Because we created it with the user. And these are your default settings. Transcription is actually a plan-specific feature. It's where the system listens to the voicemail message and then types it out on the voicemail email notification. Now, if people are not speaking into their microphone properly or there's a lot of background noise, then the system does it the best that it can, but it's not always going to be 100% accurate. Voicemail to email is a default setting, which basically just means we're attaching an MP3 file to the email notification, right? So when a user gets a voicemail, right, they get an email by default. It's going to have the date, the time, phone numbers involved, etc., in the body of the email. If you have transcription on your account and enabled for that voicemail box, then the system will type out that message in the body of the email. But it would also include MP3 attachment, right? So you can just, on your computer, just double click, and now you're listening to that voicemail message. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they are full and cannot hold any more. If you have people who are not good about cleaning up their voicemail boxes, then you may want to turn on this option here, which is delete after notification. Right, so basically what happens, system gets the voicemail, sends out that email notification with the attachment. I guess I should make sure I recheck that. And then it deletes the voicemail message from the system. So what that means is when you delete messages after the notification is sent, your user can only ever check the voicemail messages via their email. Right? If I leave this unchecked, Aaron he can log into the user portal, check his voicemails there, or he can log in over the phone and listen to his voicemails over the phone, as well as via his email. Finally, this is for users with multiple devices. When you first enable it, it looks like this. Right? The system is waiting for you to tell it what devices to make use of. Right? So then you would uncheck the devices you want to use. And here, let's get it down to default here. Right? It looks like that. So now you say, okay, well, if you click and drag, you can say, okay, I want this one to ring for that long, this one to ring for that long. You still have the timestamps here, so you can adjust that. You also have distribute. Right? Click and drag, you can change the order, etc. And then click on Save Changes. Users can have their own fax boxes if you want them to. If you do this option, I do recommend making use of a phone number because that means a user can send and receive faxes. You do have the option to make use of an extension number. Now, if you do that, this person can then only ever receive faxes. They're not able to send out. Also, you're relying upon that inbound caller, or the inbound faxer, I should say, right? Basically, they have to dial your main number first. When the greeting plays, then they need to enter in the fax box extension and then click send fax on their fax machine. Or they have to have a fax machine that allows them to add a pause and then an extension number, right? Like, and several, at least as far as I've seen so far anyway, email to fax services may not allow faxing to extensions. So that may also limit the ability to accept faxes from people. So that's why I say, hey, it's better to use a phone number. It gives you more options or more versatility. Conference Bridge. When you enable it as an admin, you just need to create the PIN number for the user and then click on Save Changes. The enable video conference, that's only within your Dash staff, right? So if your staff is having a conference, you enable it, then they can all use video. Anyone outside, though, would not be able to. For that conference PIN number, your staff members can also change that on their own in the user portal. Call forwarding, you have off, on, and failover mode. Now, your staff members can turn off and on call forwarding on their own. Failover mode, you would have to set up. And what this is right, you choose a kind of device, right, desk phone or mobile, you put +1, area code and phone number, and save changes. So what happens if Aaron's VoIP phone goes offline, right, becomes unregistered, and a call happens to come into user at that time, the system under failover mode, call forwarding failover mode here, will automatically forward the call to the phone number you designated, right, probably his cell phone. Customize call recording. When you first enable it, it looks like this. Essentially, the system wants to know what kind of calls you want to record. Right, inbound internal, right, coworker Bob called Aaron, right? Inbound external, customer Mary called Aaron. Right, outbound internal means Aaron called coworker Bob. Right, and that outbound external means Aaron called customer Mary. And then you click on Save Changes. Every account includes at least some level of storage included with it as part of your monthly plan price. You'd want to double check with our account services team. They can verify how much storage you have and what the overage is if you go over. It's on a per gigabyte basis. Music on hold, you can just enable this, and that way your users can have their own hold music if you want them to. Right, so for instance, like you could have your sales team have one version of hold music, right, to promote a current special. Whereas for your support team, you would have a different set of hold music, so that way they can say, hey, go to our support pages to submit a ticket, that sort of thing. Do not disturb just means you're telling the system not to offer calls to the devices on the user, meaning they'll be sending calls basically to voicemail. Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature. When you enable it, you enter a hot desk ID. I usually say, if you make use of 4-digit extensions, then with hot desking, just make the hot desk ID their extension number, and then click on Save Changes. What this is for is in a shared office environment, or as more companies go to a hybrid scheduling where you may have less desks and phones available. So Aaron comes into the office on Tuesday, right? He sits down at desk number 2, picks up the handset. He hits *11. That turns on hot desking for that phone. The system will ask him for his hot disk ID, right? So he'd enter 1001, and then the system will tell him, now calls will be sent to this device. Rest of his workday, while he's at that desk, right, calls to his user will be ringing to that phone that he's sitting at. End of his day, he picks up the handset and hits *12 to turn off hot desking. Next time he comes into the office, let's say it's Thursday, Angela's sitting at desk number 2. He says, good morning. He sits down at desk number 5. Same thing, picks up handset, *11, hot desk ID. Now he's getting calls at that phone. Voicemail boxes. So here you see all your voicemail boxes on the account. Anyone who has their name in this third column means that was a voicemail box that was created with the user. If they don't, that means that was, in the case of the main voicemail box, the system created that automatically. For others, it would be, that means you created a voicemail box up here at the top. You give it a name, a voicemail box number, and a PIN number. You click on Create Voicemail Box. Once it's been created, you can click on the little wrench icon here, right? So you can review the box number and the PIN number, or change them if need be. Under Advanced, Greeting Media. So the media file, that's your normal greeting message, right? So you can upload a file or find an existing one on the system, right? MP3, .wav, recorded in mono. Now, the temporary file, this is for like your vacation or out of office voicemail message. So if you have something selected under temporary, right, it's going to play. It will supersede anything you have selected in media. Once the person's back from vacation, you'd want to set temporary back to none, and that way the media file will play normally. Recipients, now your user voicemail boxes, they already have one recipient built in, right? The email address used for login. But for any voicemail box that you created manually, you want to click on recipients. You want to click here where it says add new recipient, enter the email address. Now, if you only need to add one, then you can click on save changes. If you want to add multiple people, right, you click enter the first email address, click add, and now a new row will show up so you can keep adding more people. So once you have a media file place and a recipient in place, under options, you can click on already set up. Then here you also have the options for deleting after notification or attach to the email messages. Announce only mode, this is if you want a voicemail box that's just there to give out information, right? So like directions, show times, that sort of thing. Advanced routing, this is for direct inward system access or DISA. And what DISA is, it allows you to call into your system from a landline or cell phone, log in, and then make an outbound call from your system. And that way, when you make that outbound call, it's not your cell phone number that shows up as the outbound caller ID, but your main company number. Now, this is a feature that is not enabled on new signups. It's something you have to request from our account services team. And part of that is because this can open your account up to fraudulent behavior. So once it's been enabled on the account, you click enable here. And by default, the system here assigns a PIN number. If you leave it just like this, then to access DISA, you would have to assign it as a menu option from either your main virtual receptionist or one of your auto attendants, right? So like menu option 9, right? That's not advised, right? Because sooner or later, someone will hit the wrong menu option by accident, even if you don't make it an announcement as part of your main greeting, right? They may hit it by accident, and then they're prompted to enter PIN number. Unfortunately, there's some people out in the world who take that as a challenge, and so then they try to find out what the PIN number is, right? They'll keep trying it until they get it. Once they get it, or if you did it, like because that's how you have it set up, you'll hear dial tone. At that point, you can hit area code and phone number, make a call out. What we recommend is click edit settings here, click add extension, and now give it an extension number that's not part of your normal sequence. So like this system started with extension 1000. So the system is trying to be helpful when it's saying, hey, your next available extension number is 1022. For DISA, I would actually clear this out and make it an extension number that is just essentially random. And then click Save Changes. So now I call into my main number that goes to my virtual receptionist or one of my auto attendants. Right, I'll hear the main greeting. I enter in this extension number that I just created. Then I'll be prompted for this PIN number. And then I'll hear that dial tone, and then I can make my outbound call. Now, again, when I make that outbound call, the caller ID that shows up is this number here. Yeah, and again, one of the reasons that's not enabled for new accounts when they sign up right away, because again, it does open up you to fraud because you may not realize someone's making calls on your account right away until your next invoice, which usually results in sticker shock. Now, one way to know would be under the call logs. So the call logs show your history of your call activity, right? So this, I'm a default sheet to today, so I can see I've had some calls coming into the system already. I can click on them and see if there's more further details, right? If I go further back to this month, you can scroll out. I have some outbound calls here. So it looks like Jan 'd. 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 Normally it tells me what device he used. So here, for instance, you see a call came in and was offered to this particular device. And the call, when you see normal clearing, that means the call ended normally. Here you see an outbound call came from this particular VoIP device, right? So I know, oh, okay, that was a legit call out. Now, little fire hydrant icon here, this will create an email for you that goes to support@virtualpbx.com. It will have the technical details of the call. In the body of that email, I do recommend that you type in what happened, right? The context. I.e., like my phone did not actually ring, or I had bad audio. The custom tab here, right? You can set your date range. The system will let you go back up to 1 year, right? 12 months. Our engineers can go back and up to a total of 18 months, so an additional 6. But after that, the call data is not available. So if you need your call data for compliance reasons, you have the download link here. I recommend doing that every month. Right, set your date range from the first of the month to the end of the month, click download. This downloads it as a CSV file. So then you can use whatever spreadsheet program to sort the data and view it. Feature codes, I've already talked about a couple of these, but these are a way for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. Now, this information is a web page on our support pages, right? There's a feature codes doc. There's also a phone commands cheat sheet document. It's a one-page PDF. Gives you a little context on how to use the various feature codes. All right, so that's the dashboard. So let's go down here. Blacklists is an included feature. It allows you to create a list of phone numbers that you are blocking from reaching your system. Right. So you would click Edit Blacklist over here to the right. And if you don't have a list, you would click Add. Right? If you have one in place, you just click on it, give it a name, and then you choose if you're blocking anonymous caller ID calls, right? I.e., caller comes in, if the system does not receive proper incoming caller ID, it would show up as anonymous, right? And if you have this on, that means we're blocking it, so they get busy tone. Beyond that, you would click on Add Number, and then you put +1 area code and phone number, right? No dashes, no spaces, no parentheses. And you keep clicking Add Number until you're done. Once you're done, you click on Save. You go back to Settings. You want to make sure your lists are over here to the right under Selected, right? And then you would click Update. And now any phone number on these two lists, when they try to reach any of my company phone numbers, they get busy tone. Faxes, this included feature is your Fax Manager. So you can get to any of your inbound fax boxes here. And I don't know if I have any valid inbound faxes that have come into this system recently. Oh, here we go. So here you see the date and the time, right? The phone numbers they came from, where it's going, number of pages. You can download the file as well. Right? You can also click on the box so you can remove a fax if you don't need it to be on the system any longer. The little last icon here, this gives you the details of it, or of the fax. Mostly useful if there's a problem with an inbound fax that showed up here. Doesn't happen very often. Next up, you have the Outbound Facts tab. Again, you can select the particular voicemail or fax box you want to use. And here, you would look for, again, any kind of that looks like no one is sent out. So if you see any failures under the Outbound Facts tab, that means we had a problem communicating with the other fax machine. Right, so that could be, busy, right? We kept getting busy tones. So then the system just eventually gave up. It usually tries the system tries 3 times before it gives up, and then it says, okay, that's a failed fax attempt. And there'll be a little eyeball icon, or this last icon that you saw also on the inbound fax. If you click on that, it sometimes gives you more details like user busy or something like that. Email to fax logs. You can see here we have a failed fax attempt. Now, when under email to fax logs, that means the system had a problem processing the fax attempt, right? Or the request. It didn't even actually get to the point of dialing the number. So got the little thumbs down icon. You can see it came from someone with the right email domain, right? The to field was correct. Here's the date, the time. You got the little eyeball icon here. If you click on that, give you some more information, and it says no valid attachments. So that could be they didn't include any attachments, right? They simply forgot to click attach, right? It could be they sent a JPEG, right? Because our system will only allow you to fax out a PDF or a TIFF. All right, number manager, this will take you to our spare number page. Reports actually takes you to the advanced reporting, which unfortunately doesn't work here. But you'd want to go to our YouTube channel and view under videos the advanced reporting demo. Essentially, this allows you to create your own reports based off your call, so you can have better visibility in terms of your call traffic. Voicemail manager, right? This lets you get to any voicemail box on the system. You can see new messages, the date, the time, who it came from, the phone number, the duration. You can play it back. You can download it. If you click on the box here, this box, right, you can move it to a different voicemail box. You can also change its status. Ecd Queues. Ecd stands for Automatic Call Distribution. It's a call center feature. This is actually an add-on or upgrade to existing plans. In some cases, you may have to change your plan that will then allow you to add the Ecd Queues. We also have 2 different versions of Ecd Queues. What you see here is our standard Ecd Queues. We also have Ecd Queues Pro. Now, an account can only have one or the other, cannot have both. The Pro queues have some more features built into them. If you go to our YouTube channel, under the videos, you want to look up the Ecd Queues Pro demo. That will better show the differences. I'll try to highlight some of those as we go through this, but that demo does a much better job. All right, so over here, you have add a new queue, or I'm just gonna click on the gear icon here. All right, so you give it a name, first and foremost, and then a call-in number or extension, right? So an Ecd queue can have either its own phone number or an extension number, but it cannot have both. Now, it can still be a menu option off of your auto attendant or your virtual receptionist. But just for like a transfer perspective, right? So if you have staff members transferring calls between queues, extension number is probably easier. Then we got the queue routing strategy. Again, this pull down doesn't work. Round robin just equalizes out over time. Most idle means whoever's been waiting the longest for a call gets the next call that comes in. Least calls means the least amount of connected calls. Right? So if Bob has spoken to 2, Mary has spoken to 5, under least calls, Bob gets the next call that comes in the queue. And then there's least offered, right, which is a combination of completed and missed calls. So let's say Bob's been offered 20 calls, but Mary's been offered 5. Under least offered, Mary gets the next call that comes in, even if Mary's spoken to all 5 and Bob only spoke to 2. Hold treatment, sort of cut off, do apologize. You can upload your own file, .wav.mp3. The Pro queues, you can actually have multiple media files play, right, one after the other if you wanted. You can also announce the position in line or the expected wait time. The queue timeout, measured in seconds, is how much time the inbound callers can wait on hold. The queue call limit is how many people you're allowing to wait on hold. This is on top of your staff members who are already on calls with people from the queue, right? So Bob and Mary can be on calls, and 4 more people can be waiting on hold. Timeout immediately if empty. This means if I have none of my staff are logged into the queue, and this is enabled, and a call comes into the queue, the system will treat that inbound caller as if they already hit this 3,600 seconds. The escalation call flow after timeout. So after that 3,600 seconds, this is a pull down. What do you want the system to do with the call? Right? Send it to a different queue, ring group, back to the main menu, voicemail box, user, etc. And then you have the zero out to call flow. Basically, if you select something here from this pull down, you're enabling the inbound caller to press 0 while they wait on hold to stop waiting on hold, right? And then you're sending them to a voicemail box, a user, a group, main menu, etc. Right? If you leave this at none, that means they're not able to press 0, right? So they either wait on the line until someone picks up, or they hang up, or the escalation or the timeout call flow takes effect. Agent behavior. So agent recovery time. Oops. Measured in seconds. This is so after. Right now it's set at 15. So say Bob finishes a call, the system will wait 15 seconds before it offers him another call from the queue. Right? So it gives him a chance to get a sip of water, finish notes, etc. Force away on reject or missed. If this is enabled, that means if an agent misses a call, right? Let's say Bob misses a call, the system will automatically mark him as away until he makes himself ready again. Right? If he's away, he can't be offered calls. Agent Connect timeout measured in seconds. By default, this is 20 seconds, which is plenty of time for a VoIP phone. Once cell phones and landlines are officially announced as part of queues, then you may want to increase that, especially in the case of cell phones. So when you're done, you would click on Create Queue or Save Changes. So once you've created your queues, over here on the left, you click on the little members icon. And this list right here is showing the people that I have already allocated to be available to be in my queues, right? So they can be in my queues. If I click on Manage Members, that list now moved over to the right. This list on the left, these are my other staff members. If I want to add, say, Geo here to be part of my queues, I just click on I highlight his name, and then I click on Add as a Member. Oops. Oh, looks like he's got something on his user. We'll try Gene. There we go. And now you see that Gene has been moved over here to the right. So she can be part of my queues now. So once you've assigned people, so if you click on a queue that doesn't have anyone, right, you have a big button here for adding agents. So you can click and add people over. Now, in the queue, when people are already logged in, right, it's down here. It's a lot smaller, right? Add agents, but same process, right? You click and drag whoever you want to be over. Once you have agents assigned to a queue, you can click on managers. And now you can choose which ones of those agents are actually the managers, right? Just click and drag them over to the right. Click on Save Changes. Now you see here that I'm already marked as ready in this queue. So let's go ahead and log out for a minute. So beginning of my day, or let's say I just got assigned to this queue, right? I log into dash.virtualpbx.com. I click on Ecd Queues. I click on Begin Session. Now by default, the system will start me off as away. I should click on the little phone icon here. And I should select one of my VoIP devices. Now, ideally, one of these would be green. And then I click on the phone icon. And then I set myself as ready. All right, so green, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to take calls that are coming to the queue. While I'm being offered a call, this little bar here on the left will turn light blue. When I'm on a connected queue call, it turns a dark blue. If someone dials my extension number directly or I make an outbound call, this will turn yellow. And if I'm on wrap out time, it will show up as gold. Now, the Pro Queues, they have a third icon here for performance. So an admin or manager can compare agents to each other in terms of like the call volume they're taking. The Pro Queues also have the ability for managers to eavesdrop in on a call, right? They can whisper to their staff member, so help them while they're on a call, or even barge, right? So take over the call if necessary. But again, take a look at that Ecd Queues Pro demo on our Ecd Queue or on our video YouTube channel. Excuse me. Dynamic caller ID. This is plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID for your VoIP phone users. Going to click edit here next to this existing rule. So this one I named 408, and under this pull down here, this has all your phone numbers on your account. So I selected a 408 phone number, and then I just said, hey, whenever my VoIP phone users dial for a 408 phone number, automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 408214 number. Right, so that way to the person who I'm calling, it looks like a local call. The other way to do it is this one here, where I created a feature code. So now I'm relying on my staff members to remember to dial *550, then the area code and phone number that they're reaching out to. And when they do that, the system will automatically change their outbound caller ID to this 323206 number. And when you create your own feature codes, we do recommend a star and then 3 digits. And that way you should not run into any problems with the system's feature codes. Monitor is another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff members. Right? So green means they're available. Right? Blue means they'd be on a call. You can switch by devices. You can see who's available and who's busy. Over here, you have your active inbound calls. So any inbound active calls would show up here with their own little box, and you can see who they're speaking to. And then the parked calls, if you have any parked calls, they would show up here with the parking spot number. Recording Manager can take you to 2 different places depending on your account setup. By default, it will open up a new tab and take you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. You do need to log in, which just uses your login information, and then you would view your call recordings. You can listen to them, download them, delete them, etc. If you have AWS enabled on the account and you have it linked to your AWS account, then the Recording Manager would actually take you to AWS to show you the call recordings there, so you can listen to them that way. The AWS you would need to talk to our account services team in order to get that enabled. Excuse me. That level of storage is usually for if you have high volume and you're recording every call, for example, you'd want to use AWS because their storage pricing is better than ours, especially at that level. All right, webhooks, plan-specific feature. You'd actually want to talk to our sales team about this, but this allows you to link Dash to other software. Right? It does require some level of programming. You click on Add New Webhook. You tell it basically what you're trying to do. Click on Create Hook, and then you need another piece of software like Zapier, for instance, that you're linking to. I recommend on our YouTube channel taking a look at the Introduction to Zapier webinar. Again, on our YouTube channel, gives you an idea of what we have done or what you can do. Also, if you go to developer.virtualpbx.com, you can see samples of code that we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. And then lastly, we have the user portal. So every user has their own individual user portal. As an admin, you can't get to anyone else's specific user portal, but you would have access to basically all the information. Here's the voicemail tab. So you would see, as a user, I would see any voicemails that I have on my system, the date, the time, I can play it back, I can listen to it, download it, I can delete it. Call history, I could see my call history and I could filter by date. So I could go back all the way here. Right, so I can see the calls that have come in and out. The fax tab only works if I had my own fax box, which I don't. But then I would see my fax history and I can again adjust the dates. The contact list, this is view only as far as your users are concerned or from the user portal, right? So I can't, as a user, adjust any of this. It's just for my information, right? So I can see Bob's extension number, right? Or any group's extension number, auto attendance, etc. Conference tab. It's a little squished over here on the right, but this is where your staff members update their PIN numbers for both themselves as a moderator or as a participant PIN number. Then they have the options here. Are people joining muted or deafened? And then is the system going to play entry and exit tones? While you're in a conference over here, the plus sign, that means you can invite other Dash users to your conference, right? So like someone isn't there on time, you can say, hey, remember we have this? Lock means you lock a conference. No one else can join. Mute everybody, unmute everybody, and the conference call. Also, while you're in a conference, there'll be like each participant will have their own box, right? So you can mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And then the settings and devices tab. This is where your users would enable their own call forwarding. Put a check mark here, put +1 area code and phone number, and then save changes and see the status of their phones. And that is everything. Looks like I ran a little long. I do apologize. And I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today, and we'll be back here again.